Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So in today's video we're going to be taking a close look at something that I picked up from AliExpress. We can also call this thing the Xbox Series Stick. Yep, from China. They are actually making all kinds of weird products and you never know what you're getting. So when it comes to this, having a red, blue, dual color, light, ultra HD, double rocker controller, and this is even more naughty, saying like support emulator PS2. And more like, you know, with many of these devices we have seen all kinds of emulation performance, but PlayStation 2 is one of the things I have never seen before, or at least that was running decently enough to enjoy. Interesting, at the side we do see some platforms, everything but PS2, so I'm guessing, oh no, emulator PS2 over there. But okay, so we do have different kind of sizes. This is a one on 28 gigabyte. I think there was also a 256 gigabyte. So in here we're finding both controllers. I must say one of the improvements I already see throughout the years that the controls are getting overall, let's say, better. So they are a little bit of an Xbox style look, but not 100%. They come with built-in batteries. The layout is maybe the same, but the overall quality is absolutely not the same like an Xbox controller. When you're going to be pressing the joystick, the resistance is absolutely crazy. So the ABXY button do feel quite nice over here. Pressing the home button will give you a light up feature here at the side, so that is kind of cool. The overall design of the D-pad is kind of interesting. It's a lower, like a floating D-pad configuration that we do see with handhelds nowadays. The resistance is a lot, so it's not going to be super comfortable to play. No replaceable battery, so you need to open it up if you want to change out the batteries itself. In here we're finding all of the needed cables. This is one for actually charging. We're having a micro USB, and I'm guessing that is going to be for the stick, an extension HDMI. Having here the toilet paper manual like always, with no useful explanations. And in here we're having the Xbox Series sticks. You know, this is kind of cool. This looks really funny. So okay, so another thing we have noticed throughout like all of our videos, like these things are having very cheap SD cards. So when you're booting it up for the first time, it does work. Okay, you need to make a backup because these things get corrupted after a couple of boots sometimes. This does have like CH on it, but some of them have no actually anything on it. You can just remove the plastic cap over here. And if you can fit it into an HDMI port, you can fit it in, but there is actually an extension for that because these things are way too big and too thick. So in here we're having the USB dongle. You're going to be plugging this thing in. And then of course we're having over here an input for the micro USB. That's it. There's nothing much actually to do. Just plug it in, get this thing some power, and let's see what we're getting when it comes to this. But let's do an overview of how you need to connect this. So you can plug in straight in, but this is a great example that I don't have the space to plug this thing in. So what you're going to be doing is plugging this in with an extension cord. So this is not actually a stick anymore. The idea of a stick is you can plug it in your television. So for the power, we're using the micro USB cable. We're going to be using a separate adapter. I think a 2 amp should be enough. This is a little bit overkill. But if you have a monitor with an USB, sometimes you can plug it into the USB port, but be careful with it. But I'm using an external, let's say, power supply. It's more safe and it's also more stable when it comes to that. So I think the most convenient thing is, so let's say if you have a television or something in a USB port, you're disconnecting all of the power of your monitor, it automatically shuts down the dongle because there is no on and off switch. That is something you should add to these things, because if you're going to be plugging it in, you're turning on your television, or at least the power itself, it will always be turned on. But when the device is booted up, how are you going to be configuring your controls? So first of all, this is quite easy. The only thing you need to do is boot up the controls, because everything has been preset. So I'm going to be using the home button over here with player 1, but also when it comes to player 2. And this way it's going to be configuring the controls, because from the factory everything has been configured. So it's like a plug and play situation. If this doesn't work, you can check out your dongle, but if your single dongle is going to be corrupt or problem having this stopped working, you cannot do anything with these controls. But let's do a quick overview of the menu itself. Well, over here we're having the favorites, history, game, and settings. So it's kind of interesting how they configured this. So you can navigate through, let's say, the different settings. So you can also use the L1 and R1 when you want to quickly go with this other option. So what is convenient if you're going to be using that like this, you can just fairly easy go into the menu, go to the settings. Otherwise, if you're going to be doing this, otherwise you need to press down and up to actually get into there. So we're having languages. Let's see what kind of languages. Oh, we have all kinds of different languages now. Even Dutch is in here. So having the version 1.3, this is the model called the M88. And we have restore factory settings. We be very careful with it because it's possible if you're going to be pressing that everything is going to be wiped, or sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, we're having over here the emulators, history of games that we have been playing, and the favorite, or at least I didn't play that, but it was already set up in here. But let's do a quick overview of the different emulators. So we're having over here arcade, 8-bit, 16-bit like always. We have some Atari, we're having some old school arcades. And what's interesting, so there's like different emulators that they configured in different categories. Game Gear, having the Game Boy Classic, Advance and Color, Genesis, Mame. So having Mame and Final Burn Neo, Megadrive, Atari 2600 or 2600, and it's kind of weird. We're having over here NES and NES H. So Neo Geo Pocket. So when it comes to the amount of different emulators, this thing is very extended. And we do have a lot of stuff, but I think the most interesting is that actually the PlayStation 2 part. We're having some NDS, but not the 3DS. So there's a lot of stuff that we can actually play with this. So let's get into it. Let's see what we can do. And overall, how good will the overall performance be? Because when it comes to specification wise, there was not a lot of information going on here. The shenanigans already start with getting into the PlayStation 2. Yeah, you can see we're having the freaking buttons on screen because it's actually an Android box. And there is nothing much you can actually do in the menu. So let's go with the select and start. We can make a quick load, quick save. The only thing we can do at this point is getting into the controls to see what is going on. And this is what happens a lot of these Chinese products, that you get something that doesn't work or have like a bugload of freaking problems. So let's see if we can get into the controls somewhere that we can fix the controls. Touchscreen has been, I'm guessing, has been set on to port 1. So we need to shut out the freaking touchscreen controls, but also see controller type not set. Automatic mapping, let's see. Okay, man, so they didn't map everything. So let's see if we can actually map something. Yeah, we can actually do that, so that is great. So now we're going to be doing, let's go D-pad left, triangle, cross. And the question remains, can we actually keep these settings, or is this something that's going to be resetted when actually putting up? So what we're going to be doing now is setting everything up over here. Oh crap, wrong button. And then we're going to be seeing if we can save it. We can also try to maybe, yeah, we can map this one or two. And the only thing we can actually see if we can map everything, make a quick load, quick save, and in this case, fix everything, because this is absolutely a big bummer. So that seems to be working. We've configured everything, so let's get into the game. Another thing I want to check out, if we can put in a frame per second counter to see if everything is going to be working perfectly. So far I've seen, I didn't see any weird thing going on. No, I don't want to set this. Let's go. And I just want to start the freaking game. Everything has been set up, the controls work. We do have like frames per second counter. And let's see how good it actually runs. So far so good. Into the intro, I didn't notice any weird things going on. Let's get into the game and let's see how well it overall performs. I must say at this point I'm surprised. Of course we can check out some different games, because it's going to be, like say, depending on how good the overall emulator is, because they are using Ether SX2, but is this like the latest edition, or is this something of like an unfinished? But let's get into some fighting. I do see some dips to 50 frames per second. Aha! See, and this is what I mean. So when you're getting actually into the game, okay, let's see if I configured everything correctly. Somehow I messed it up when it comes to the control, but the point is, I just wanted to see what happens if you're getting into the game. And you can just see that even a simple game like the Budokai series, this is so freaking unplayable. This runs on really slow frames per second. What you can actually do is getting into the settings again, mess around with it, maybe do some other stuff that we can just do some frame skipping whatsoever. But yeah, is this the way how you actually want to play? I think if you're saying you can actually run PlayStation 2, they should run out of the box. But no configuration of the controls, but also if you go into the performance, you can mess around with all kinds of stuff. Oh, and yeah, again, it's absolutely out of the box, a piece of garbage. But this review really started quite negative. Yeah, it's unfortunate. So when it comes to these, let's say, plug and play devices, so one of the things that it is not an unfinished product. That is one thing for sure. But let's do a little bit of a downgrade, or at least to the PlayStation. Let's see how that runs. What kind of emulator are they using? So let's do a quick overview of the list. And there's all kinds of stuff on here. And if you're getting the bigger SD card, of course, it's going to be having way more games. But the big question remains is that do we actually have the, let's say, the sounds, because they are ripping the sounds from, let's say, the overall games, and they're giving a little bit more option to adding more games, but we're missing out the music itself. And I think that is quite unfortunate. So let's boot up a game and let's see what's going on here. So let's move on to Raystorm and let's see what's going on with emulation performance. There is no music. I've already expected that. So let's see, we're having the analog stick is configured, the D-pad too. So it seems to be that I'm actually going to be using player 2. Is that the case over here? But emulation performance on native resolution is just fine. So let's see, let's boot up the second controller. It hasn't been logged in. Yep, this seems to be working just fine. So there's, so far I know, no indication to see which is player 1 or player 2. So you need to figure that out yourself. But they have been set to a certain configuration. Okay, play 1, play 2, that part seems to be working. Let's press select and start. So you can see it runs through RetroArch in the back end, where you can make a quick load, quick save, have disk control, and actually go out of the game this way. But there are some more options. So pressing the Y button over here, so we can even do a search favorites. So let's go searching. So I'm wondering, so if I'm going to be pressing Ridge Racer, so we have actually 2 games on here. The navigation is quite easy. We can just easily go into the game, boot it up, and I think we're going to be searching into the folder of the certain platform we're in. And that is one of the things. So when it comes for playing games, so loading times can even be faster if you're going to be getting a better SD card, because they're using cheap SD cards with really low, let's say, frames. But so far the loading times are quite nice. Well, let's boot up into the game. Let's see, I also have no music in here. No music again. Emulation performance seems to be working fine. Let's get into this first part over here. I can tell you that you don't want to play this game on like a 55 or bigger screen, because everything looks really pixelated. And I think with the mini PCs nowadays, we can actually use this with higher resolutions. Oh crap, they completely mapped the buttons wrong. Is this? Oh, seriously? Oh man. So normally like the triangle needs to be like the braking or the square, but they messed it up with a completely different button. So we need to play it like that. Oh yeah, and like, you know, these things are messed up all the time, you know. But no music, messed up button layout. And we can make a quick load, quick save. Let's see if that actually worked out. Okay, yeah, that seems to be working just fine, okay. Moving on to the PlayStation Portable, another device that is quite demanding for these, like say, basic plug and play sticks. But what is kind of interesting, if you're pressing select and start, we're getting just the PP as PPP emulator. And in here we're having the option to set up all kinds of stuff. So I have it set to the back end of Vulkan, but you know what makes no sense? Having it set to rendering resolution 3 times. I know it's going to be looking way better, but I can already tell you it stutters like crazy. So let's start off with 1 times PlayStation Portable settings, because otherwise it's going to be looking great, but it's going to be having a really bad overall, let's say, performance. Let's shut off the filtering. Let's go all the way, show frames per second, and let's see if we can mess around some other stuff up or fix it. Frame skipping set to off. But let's get into it. So it looks absolutely horrible, but I just wanted to see how good the performance is of God of War: Chains of Kinkiness. And from there we can actually mess around a little bit with it. Okay. Yes, thank you. So far so good. So it's running stable 30 frames per second. So that's interesting to see that we can actually play this game, because with all of the cheap sticks we have tested it out, they had like massive problems. So moving on to the game settings. So let's do a little bit of tweaking. Let's go to 2 times. So make it look way better. To see what happens. Oh, this looks so much better now. I completely understand when they went for the 3 times resolution. Where this is not like the best performance we have seen, but at least like in general of like emulation with, let's say, Android boxes. But you know, this is playable. It looks better. I would just leave it on 2 times resolution and leave the filters off. But it's kind of cool to see that we can actually play PlayStation Portable with this kind of performance. But beside that, this is great. So we can make a quick load, quick save if you want to. There we go. But so far so good. Everything has been mapped like it should be. And performance-wise, this is quite surprising. Save function itself from the game seems to be working fine too. But you know, when it comes to playing some Tekken, I do wonder one thing. So they're going to be bringing this to the next level with 1080p rendering resolution 4 times. Yeah, they're trying to push this thing to the limit with no frame skipping. Of course, another thing we're going to be doing is getting into the frames per second. I want to see how good it actually runs. Okay. So far the buttons have been mapped correctly, so we can actually play Tekken as it should be. It stutters big time, running 30 frames per second, going all places. So again, we can start tweaking if we want to, like lower the upscaling, but so far in game, we're having in the beginning some stutters. Ooh. Oh, I started to get like a little bit of an input delay. How was that move again? Oh, that was this. That was the move I was looking for. Yeah, but the button mapping is correctly. So when getting into the game, we did have the stutters that we have seen before. See, this is what I mean. It stutters like crazy getting into the cutscenes. So that's one of the things that we need to change out. You know, we do need a little bit of tinkering when it comes to this. I understand they want to get yourself like the best looking version of Tekken 5 with the PlayStation Portable on your TV. But again, if it's going to be having a lot of problems through into cutscenes, I think that is not going to be an overall great performance. But let's do a little bit more gameplay. So far everything runs a little bit better now with lowering at only 1 resolution. Let's get into the cutscene itself, and so far no slowdowns. But let's see what's going on now. Yeah, it still dips. But maybe this is just a general problem of the emulator itself. But out of the box, you do need a little bit of tinkering. But surprising to see like how good it overall runs if you're going to be looking into all of the game stick that we've been messed around with. And again, there is so much stuff we can actually tweak. But let's try a little bit of a Sega Dreamcast. And with Sega Dreamcast, we do have a little bit of upscaling going on with an upscaling of 1.5 resolution. So performance-wise, this game seems to be running just fine with a little bit of an Hydro Thunder. It's such a cool game, man. I actually played this the first time on my Xbox 360 with the Live Arcade. It was absolutely a very cool port of this. But now even with these game sticks, you can see that we're having a little bit of a more emulator support, but also going to be trying to do a little bit of an upscaling. In here we're having the option to make a quick load, quick save by pressing both, selecting the start. So in here we're having the settings. It has been set to Vulkan at the back end. VSync has enabled, but also 960 by 720 is the resolution that we're going to be running in. So far everything seems to be working great. We have no widescreen hack enabled. We can mess around with it if you want to, but and again, if you're going to be implementing too much stuff or doing a little bit of upscaling, we're going to be having a lot of lag and a lot of frames dip. So it's not going to be an overall pleasant experience. Moving into the next game, I also want to check out if you can actually make a save in the game, because that's an option maybe some of you really want to use, but so far I didn't get any message errors having a problem with the quick load, quick save. It seems to be that we do have audio with this or music. We're going to be lowering it to of copyright music, because this had some really cool music for back in the day. But yeah, getting into the game. Let's see how it has been set up. Everything has been set up to 1.5 of upscaling resolution. And I can tell you that the little bit of an upscaling they're using, everything looks absolutely better. I'm just using like a 24-inch screen, but upscaling is something you, in my opinion, you really want if you have like a massive screen, like a 50-inch plus. Alright, so let's see if we can just switch in here. They've been set L1 to L1, R1 are we're going to be using. They're micro switch, so the controller very pleasant to play with. Oh, we got a minor hiccup there. But again, if you have like games that you added to this system and you want to have multiple games that have like problems, you can also start tweaking with every single one of them. The most easy thing you can do is like lower the upscaling resolution like we did with the PlayStation Portable, but it will look absolutely worse. Yeah, the performance-wise, with a minor hiccups, this seems to be running quite well. So we do have all kinds of Sega systems. I didn't see any Sega Saturn or having a brain for this point. So the list is massive when it comes to, let's say, the Megadrive. So we can go very quickly to a different part if you're going to be using the L and R1 buttons. So, but I love that I have like a preview in here. But when it comes to 16-bit and 8-bit stuff, that would normally like no problem whatsoever. But let's boot it up, because sometimes even these things are like really overpowered for these systems. They completely messed it up when it comes to, let's say, the overall, let's say, emulator settings. So pressing select start will give you the RetroArch, which you can see over here. But let's skip and move into the game. Audio-wise, there's nothing wrong in here. We do have widescreen enabled, so it's unfortunate they didn't use any bezels or 4:3. So if you have a television, you can mess around with it in your television, but of course this is not the way how you want to play and mess around with your television settings. Okay, D-pad and the analog stick has been configured. But if you're going to be buying a game stick like this for just basic 8-bit, 16-bit games, I think there are so many options out there nowadays. Some of them are even costing like $15, $20. They can do the same thing and sometimes even better, having aspect ratio. Man, why do I have this feeling there's a delay in here? Yeah, I think it's the game itself. Yeah, I think it's the joystick itself. And I mean, particularly when it comes to pressing, the delay of the D-pad, but also of the analog stick. But we do have like a tiny dead zone before the character actually starts moving. Even going a little bit further back in time with the Master System. Also this has the same widescreen craziness. The unfortunate part, I think, is a little bit bummer, is that you can't get into the menu, or at least we have the quick menu, configure file, so we can mess around with it if you want to, but it is quite limited when it comes to that. So quick menu, and that's actually it, you know. So I think it's quite unfortunate that we don't have the option to go into the menu of the RetroArch and say, okay, I want to have enabled bezels, 4:3 and stuff like that. Performance-wise, 8-bit, same story, runs like a charm when it comes to that. There is no filter so far I can see enabled. Sometimes we have these very cool filters we can enable. But out of the box, great overall performance. And I think it's not going to be an issue, but we're going to be going into, let's say, some more stuff, because you would be surprised how they can mess up, let's say, having a Game Advance that doesn't run great, or having stutters and other problems. So moving back to the Sega Naomi system, the counterpart of the Dreamcast with the arcade, and so this is the result. Oh, my control was turned off. But this is the result. What you're getting is a really slow running game in the intro. But getting into the game, it seems to be working. But let's play a little bit and let's see how the overall performance is. And this is exactly what I mean, you know. Sometimes you find these things not set up like it should be. But then it's the question, why does it really run that bad? Okay, so we can actually mess around with the settings. So let's do that. Okay, this has been set to an upscaling. So let's go to native. Does that work? I have no idea actually what is going on at this point. Like Vulkan, maybe no, I don't want to mess with that. VSync. Let's turn that off. So none of these things will have an effect, and this is what I mean, you know, it's not doing anything. So we can even do half, okay. Oh, this looks really hideous. But let's move to some other games and let's see what's going on. So with the Naomi list, it did have like way more games. So actually with this particular image, and let's see whether you Rhythm Heaven. Okay, there's even a rhythm game here. That's kind of cool. This one I've never seen before. But we have Igaruga. So let's put this one up and let's see what's going on. So let's see the loading times. And yeah, no, when it comes to Naomi, maybe this game will be running better, but you know, it's kind of weird. With Igaruga, let's see how the overall performance is. I've been messing around before actually booting up, so I've been setting it to native resolution, not the 1.5. So what I understand is like running through the same emulator when it comes to the Dreamcast and the Sega Naomi. But you can actually see this game seems to be running just fine, so if this is going to be an overall problem with the emulator itself. So we can actually play some Sega Naomi on the system, but it's going to be in hit or miss. What is going to be running great on this and what is going to be running not at all. So another thing I do, we can do a little bit of upscaling if you want to. I would love it that they had like the aspect ratio set to the right settings and not like this game in widescreen, because I've seen that and you don't want to play a game like that. It's a really interesting shmup when it comes to that. Seriously, like really interesting. Okay, we have an option to make a save slot over here. There was no preview, so that's quite unfortunate. And we can actually load up in here. So that part seems to be all working fine. Moving on to some really old school stuff with the Neo Geo Pocket. So one other thing I already noticed, as I said before, with some of the emulators we don't have aspect ratio going on. So also in here we cannot do anything so far I have seen. So they should at least like add some bezels or put it on 4:3 aspect ratio, because these games were played on let's say tiny displays, and now on a 24 range, oh boy, this is looking really pixelated. No filter on it. I can seriously like count the pixels now, so yeah. So but overall emulation performance wise, I will not say this is going to be running horrible of some kinds. Seems to be working just fine. Yeah. So I just wanted to see a little bit more of the, let's say, Neo Geo going on, but let's see if I can actually find. There is no Neo Geo list. This is the Mame list, and I know Mame normally has not, let's say, does have like a lot of games, but it is absolutely tiny. Like there's nothing much going on in Mame. But if you're going to be into the Final Burn Alpha, that would be another option of the emulator, but also there is nothing much to find. So let's go into the arcade. Aha, they're having some more stuff. So this is divided to Final Burn Neo, Mame and arcade. That makes no sense. What a freaking mess. But we do have some Art of Fighting 3. Oh yeah. Oh, what is interesting, that it also automatically boots into the game, no logos whatsoever. So that's great. We do have widescreen. Let's see where we can change something out in here. No, we have a configuration file, but there's nothing much we can do here. So all the same, run through the RetroArch. We do have an idea there's some filter enabled because it looks not like extreme pixelated. We can move on to tying the D-pad. Oh. The D-pad is very nice actually for fighting games, where it does have like a lot of resistance. The floating D-pad is absolutely great. So yeah, I like this. Let's try another Neo Geo game to see how this plays. So let's go with the joystick. Oh, okay, so joystick is more like a situation I need to get used to it, because the joystick is very loose. But if you're going to be playing with the D-pad again, this is going to be an absolutely great overall experience. Shoulder buttons have been mapped. Sometimes they remap them like a shortcut, so you can actually use the shoulder buttons, but they do not do anything with Neo Geo. So getting into Mame, I already noticed one thing, it's the slow audio. The reason I always loved to play this game, besides that I just love Blood Bros, this game is not running like it's supposed to be because they are using the wrong emulator in the back end. And you know, this is one of the common things they try to mess up every single time. It's quite unfortunate. So where I can actually dream this game when it comes to the graphics, but also when it comes to visualize, or at least the, let's say, the overall gameplay, audio, everything. I can actually hear that this is not going to be great. It is really slow audio. Visualize, they either added some filter over it. And also the sound effect over here is not in here. That's it. Absolutely a big fail. But overall configuration of every single emulator, it's going to be something that I noticed that is wrong with it. Where not every single game will have issues. Dyna Blasters, or actually Bomberman I love to call it, don't have any problems whatsoever. But let's do a little bit of more 16-bit, but this time go with the other systems. So we have in Super Famicom and SNES. I love that they have this tiny display in the controller. That would be cool to have. But beside that, it's actually going to be the same craziness. So let's see, and we're having two different lists, I'm guessing. Start with 2020 baseball. No, it's the same kind of list. Slightly different. So having over here 3 Ninjas Kickback, the Brazilian version and US version. But yeah, this is just like the same kind of list systems, but of course different regions. Having the BR and the USA versions. But beside that, there's nothing fancy going on over here. Let's get to the chop out with some Choplifter number 3. So Super NES seems to be running fine, and I haven't seen all kinds of stick that can run Super NES without any problem, but still they mess it up with the emulator. Still widescreen shenanigans in every single system that I've tested out. But let's get into some NES and let's see if they configured this correctly. So far, it's everything of 8-bit system, it seems to be working fine, but there's a lot of different stuff we can check out. We also have some PC Engine on here and some Atari, of course, but let's get into some NES. I'm already getting my ass kicked over here. Oh man, this game is freaking brutal. Oh! Oh! Okay, do we have actually the turbo button enabled? That will be fine. Oh yeah, there we go. But I don't hear any weird things going on with the sound effects or other things. But there we go. Okay, I wanted to showcase this. So I mean, we're going to be looking into lists. Some lists you see some weird thing going on, but we're having a pile of, let's say, invincible versions. So they implemented, let's say, files that actually have like, you cannot die, you know, they're like these hacked versions, and that would be nice if they added that like in a separate folder, but the unfortunate didn't do that. But that is kind of funny. So let's get into some R-Type. This is for the Game Boy Advance, by the way. And let's see. This is actually going to be a hacked version, so we're going to be testing this out. I also noticed a lot of difference between audio levels and just putting the monitor on one single, I would say, audio level bar. And this is another system that is completely widescreen shenanigans, because you can just actually count all of the freaking pixels on the screen, because normally you should play this on a very tiny screen. So let's get into a character. Nope, it's not an invincible. What a completely BS this is, absolutely. But in Malaysia performance, that seems to be working fine. Maybe they mean something different with invincible or whatever. Different, do I have like different, infinite lives maybe? Yeah, I got infinite lives, that's the point. Aha! That's not invincible, that is just infinite lives. I just wanted to check out some DS, but there was nothing much we can actually test, so let's grab some random games. But it completely messed up the emulator. How do I mean? So we can actually use this, it works, that's no problem whatsoever. But we do have like the touch enabled, another problem we've noticed with the PS2 emulator. But also, they didn't configure how to get back to the menu. So in this case we need to go to the system itself, and what's interesting that it actually shows you It's like how you need to connect everything and how many amps. So you need 5 volt 2 amps minimum, what I mentioned before. An interesting one going to be the N64. This is always like a little bit of a problem, but where this game stick is way more powerful than all the ones I checked out, this can be an interesting one. So let's go into the Cruising USA and some other games to see how the overall emulation is. Okay, Mapem 64 Plus is actually the emulator. So I'm hoping they indeed, like say, disabled the freaking touch buttons. And we do have aspect ratio enabled, so we don't have this widescreen craziness. Oh yeah. I can already hear the slowdowns. Oh, speeding up. Ooh, slow Cruising USA edition. And look at the glitches. Oh. Let's see which button is actually for acceleration. It's interesting. This is brake, this is brake. But there is the acceleration. So for once it's on the normal side of the controller. But yeah, as you can see, like this is what I do, you know. I would say just remove this piece of junk. There's no quick load, quick save. We're just going out of the game like that. But let's see what's going on. Let's see what kind of games that we actually can play more. And is there anything running at least decent enough to enjoy? Okay, also the Wave Ray 64 starters. And also the set to widescreen. Just get into the game to see if we can something going on. But it's interesting that it looks really nice and smooth. So why do I have this feeling that they enabled some upscaling going on? Did they map everything like it should be? Yep, the joystick seems to be working. But the second game is also not playable. And it's kind of weird because we have seen this game being playable on some of the older and cheaper game sticks. But what I find even more interesting is like games like Diddy Kong Racing I love to play. By the way, my first game I've ever played on N64. That is a game that normally is playable. But where they enable Cruising USA on the list like this, that is unplayable. That they added, or not even added, the ones that are most of the time playable. And the biggest problem we're having, select start, we can only get out of the game, so far I have seen. There's no way of getting into the settings, so we can mess around with maybe some upscaling they enabled, or widescreen, whatever. So that's quite unfortunate too, but let's get into some Duke Nukem. Some simple game like Duke Nukem. You did see the weird glitching, so I have the idea that they enabled something like a widescreen hack. Let's see, sound controls, player option, game options, but there's nothing much we can actually change in here. Just wanted to see if we can change out, let's say, the freaking brightness. Let's shut down this, maybe we can actually see something going on. So is this actually playable? We can shoot. Right joystick doesn't do anything, left it does. Oh man, seriously? We cannot even walk with this game. So we finally got a game that actually works, but we can't play it because they messed up the controls and we cannot fix the controls. Oh man, what a mess with some of the emulators. But let's see how it's going to be with some PC Engine. This is, by the way, something we do see more often. Yeah, that runs through the RetroArch, where we cannot change anything with the aspect ratio. Can we just switch? Oh, we can even use actually the analog stick, that's great. But also with no problems here. But if you just want to play these simple games, let's be honest, like there are so many game sticks that cost like $20 that can actually do the same thing. And even better with aspect ratio enabled, optioned, and having the option to just do all kinds of cool stuff for a certain amount of money. So if you just want to get into some 8-bit, 16-bit stuff of PC Engine, there are way better options out there. We can make a quick load, quick save, or just get out of the game like that. And yeah, there was all kinds of cool stuff we can actually try on this. And if you're going back to the menu, it just starts all the way up to the top. I think that is really annoying. Some of the cheaper sticks has the option to, when going back and forward, you can actually just see where you just left the list. So much more convenient. So time for some Bomberman. Already tried the Bomberman on a different system, but this seems to be also working fine without no problem. There we go. Quick bomb! Yeah! What kind of face was that? Well, let's move into some Atari 2600, 2600 to see what's going on. I have no idea what's the idea, but I'm guessing I need to grab these things. Okay, I need to be quick, but I need to avoid those. I think also runs through RetroArch, so we can just do the same kind of menu. So, but it's kind of cool to see these Atari games being playable. I'm just going out. I have no idea what I'm actually doing at this point. Oh, I need to avoid those harps. Okay, let's see what's going on. And this way we can just play. But let's get to some more newer system like the 7800 Atari. That's something I've never personally experienced in original systems. Where I did see some of these 2600 versions. Choplifter. With the 5200, okay. Let's see how they configured everything. Let's see which button. Okay, so we need to press this button for switching. I think I need to fly left. You know what's kind of cool? It's like graphical wise, when you're going to be looking at the fence, that looks really cool. If you think about how old these systems are. Oh, need to save the guy. There we go. Oh, tank is coming. It's going to destroy me. No! 9082 with the 7000 series of Atari, but wow, this looks indeed so much better. I just got a deja vu that it's exactly the same game, but I just wanted to see the difference, you know, between the systems. Ah, this white screen looks horrible. What a mess! Look at the tank! What the heck is that? There are a lot of guys fitting in this chopper. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we saved them, we saved them. There we go, there we go, there we go. 15 guys in one chopper. Wow. So dig dug on this system. Let's see what's going on with this. How does it look? Oh! I've never seen this version. I don't want to be hating on Atari, but if you're going to be looking at the NES, that version was so much looking better. But the sound effects are there, and the music. But if you're just going to be looking into the menu itself, this thing is mess. So if you want to shut it down like a PC, not that you're going to be needing that, but you just need to unplug it, otherwise it will always be powered on. So yeah, history-wise, I think this is kind of cool. We have the Y function that we can just favorite, remove all, or search. So it's very, very basic, so everybody can actually fairly easily use this, but it does come with a lot of limitations when it comes to the software, especially when it comes to setup and everything. We have seen some emulators that the option to set it up, but this thing is absolutely a hot mess in many different ways. Performance-wise, man, what a mess this thing is. But in the end, I know I understand what they're doing with this. They just want to have something plug and play and everybody can actually use it. However, for the heat, let's take a close look in the inside. Let's pry this thing open and let's see what is going on. So far, this freaking thing didn't corrupt. That is absolutely a freaking miracle because I had sticks like corrupted within a couple of, let's say, booths. Let's pry this thing open. Let's see if they implemented some cooling of whatsoever. But let's see what's under the hood. So when it comes to, let's say, the ventilation, there is possibility. You can see there's actually some ventilation that you can do. So maybe with a tiny active fan or maybe with, let's say, some cooling elements. But there is nothing going on underneath. There's seriously like nothing that's absolutely laughable. So the chip wise in here, we're having no cooling on the other side. Where some of the cheap sticks that cost like a fraction of this, having some metal, at least a little bit of metal to give a cooling method. So they completely scratched off the freaking, let's say, chip itself they were using. You can only see what kind of memory they were using, but that's it, you know, and that's quite unfortunate. So there isn't a switch on here, but so far I understand that doesn't really do anything. But I do wonder one thing, what actually happens if you're going to be booting it up without an SD card? What will it boot into? Okay, so something is actually happening. It turns on, but I mean, it gives signal, it does load. But when going to be loading without an SD card, it can be that the firmware is programmed into the chip itself, or we're just getting an intro and it doesn't do anything at all. But it's just interesting to see what they actually made with this. And the main problems we're having with game sticks is that some of them don't have the firmware internally, so we always need to have a good SD card. And yeah, let's check the SD card. So this is quite bummer, because this means if your SD cards get corrupted or there's something wrong with it, this is what you're going to be getting. When I actually picked up this game stick, it comes with a hefty price tag, and with the addition of new emulators like PlayStation 2, I was expecting actually nothing, because I know how these things work. But I just love to test it out to see what's going on, and where that has had like a lot of potential, these things are completely underpowered. Where they just promising more stuff, they're like all lies. PlayStation 2 didn't run at all, had like a lot of issues overall with N64 and everything that we have seen many times before. But with this price point, you can actually play 8-bit, 60-bit, but it's absolutely pointless, because we have seen so many different options that cost like 20 bucks and can do exactly the same thing, or even better in some cases. So thank you all for watching. Hope this video helped out. Consider subscribing, hit the little bell, and it will be great to see you in the next video.